Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Anthony Hinnon, Pennsylvania reporter for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, we have something new in Pennsylvania, and Republicans are not necessarily happy about it. Governor Josh Shapiro announced that residents renewing or getting their driver's license or state ID cards are automatically registered to vote. What can you tell us here?
Early Tuesday morning, I believe, was when the announcement was made. And it took everybody in the legislature by surprise, as well as reporters, too. It just seemed to drop from the sky. And it's a very interesting move on the Shapiro administration's part because there are few processes that a majority of adults in Pennsylvania go through, like applying for a license or a state ID. And so you have to prove your residency and your identity when you do this. And for everybody, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 20 years, we all know that voter ID is something that is very controversial, but also very popular as a policy. So this kind of seems to be heading in that direction. So while it's something that is a bipartisan issue in the sense that Republicans in general support the idea of what they call motor voter, they're really frustrated with how the Shapiro administration went about doing this. First of all, how can one man unilaterally make such a huge policy change? And number two, why didn't he ask them about it? Why didn't he say anything or suggest that they go through the legislature? Because it just kind of opens up a can of worms legally, constitutionally, and not for nothing, it stirs up, it basically opens some old wounds from the prior administration and their Secretary of State and how many issues we had there.
So I also saw that Republicans seem to really connect this to their concerns over voter ID, but it doesn't seem like Shapiro is necessarily responding to that too much, is he?
No, I don't think so. He's just mainly sticking to the top line of this is a great step forward. This all, ensures the security of our elections, but doesn't disenfranchise people in the same way that voter ID would, because, of course, Democrats historically oppose universal voter ID. They say that it is disenfranchising for marginalized communities, and they've never been supportive of it. However, they believe that this is a good middle ground. In fact, one of the senator leaders, I should say, Vince Hughes, who represents a district in Philadelphia, he called it an improvement, and he said it's a win for universal voting access. And he said, and I quote, that it is a testament to every civil and voting rights leader who has marched, raised their voice, and fought for a system that includes all Americans, including Black and Brown individuals, for those who may feel intimidated to get involved. So they're really sticking, high-level policy talking points here as far as this is what this does. It's more than just convenience. There's a real, personal and monumental shift here, and it's, in their argument, it's very bipartisan. So I think it would be fair to say, however, that and it's true from the particularly the House Republican perspective. So it is a baffling decision on the part of House Republicans because they have been pushing election reform for several years, and it's Representative Seth Grove, who chairs the Appropriations Committee. He was the one who authored huge election reform bills, and they included universal ID. And, at the time, Governor Wolf just refused to flat out entertain it because even though there was a bunch of other provisions in it, he said, we are not doing voter ID because philosophically speaking, ideologically speaking, it's voter disenfranchisement and we will not do it. But Wolf then, later went and told the Philadelphia Inquirer, well, I'm not actually opposed to voter ID. I just didn't like the way that Grove wanted to do it. Then you factor in the way that the Wolf administration's Department of State made all of these recommendations to counties right before the election that impacted the way certain mail-in ballots were collected and counted. And it just, added to the whole fire and fury of the 2020 and 2022 elections, to be fair. And so there's all of this water under the bridge as far as election law and voter ID and access to the polls. So it's certainly not something that's going to unite the parties anymore. I mean, they're pretty fractured, as we've covered many, many times, but this is this is just another one of those, it's almost like Shapiro poking the bear at this point. Everything he does, Republicans, they're just, they have a bitter taste in their mouth and they are just rejecting everything. Even if it's something that had he come to them with a bill or a proposal, they probably would have, overwhelmingly accepted.
Well, listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Kristen Smith, this is Anthony Hinnon. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.